board
Hold on,
members?
hold on. It's preparing to live stream. I think we need it, yeah. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, fellow board members. Thanks, everyone in attendance for joining. I'm going to call us to order, starting with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know. I know you guys are loud. Good at it.
Right. That takes us into our consent agenda, which is the consideration of board meeting minutes, the finance committee report, acceptance of monthly financials, the personnel, and our school closures specific to January 20th. Any questions from fellow board members on pieces on any of those items? Right. Hearing none. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as proposed.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
That takes us into public comment for agenda items only, of which we do have one from Brad Bonner. Thank you. Joining, please.
Anyway,
The podium's gone.
what's that?
Let me set it up for.
Yeah, it's over there.
That's okay.
No, we'll keep it official. That's
Okay. What you gotta do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have we started this thing yet? Yes.
Thank you very much. Going to talk about the calendar. I can tell you with 100% honesty and certainty that no decision by an elected government body has impacted me and my family more directly and significantly as the one to move to a 4-day school week. The days are long for both teachers and students. Our kids are exhausted by the end of the week, and the district was misleading about the options that would be available for kids on Fridays. This has led to significant financial impact to our family of at least $1,200 for Friday programming for our son alone, and it has disrupted our professional lives since we now spend more time working on the weekends, making up for lost productivity. We are also disappointed that the elimination of the popular winter sports program was not a transparent discussion from the onset, and instead was quietly ended without any public input. And the recent exhaustive study on districts in Montana with 4-day school weeks has reinforced our belief that they do very little to improve student achievement. Your role as a school board is not only that of an oversight body, but also includes a mandate balancing the needs and desires of the district with those of the community that you represent. This did not occur when this decision was made to move to a 4-day school week. And the recent survey conducted by the district, while flawed in many ways, reveals the imbalance this decision has created. The 4-day school week may have improved teacher recruitment and collaboration, but that has come at a significant cost. The survey is clear that a large number of families are struggling, and in many cases have experienced real social and financial harm. I wanted to make these comments in person tonight because I feel it's important to you to see and hear the people who are struggling instead of simply reading it in an email or in a survey. Several parents in my peer group said they didn't attend the town hall meeting in January not because they don't care, but because they didn't think their input would be taken seriously. To that point, before the town hall was announced, I emailed much of this feedback to every member of the calendar committee and other administrators involved in the implementation of this calendar. None of them replied. I've written emails to administrators asking, what is being done to address racist behavior at school functions, and I have sent emails expressing serious concerns about the safety of my kid at school. I've never received a reply to any of those either. Parents don't expect these problems to be solved in an email. However, it is not unreasonable to expect a simple reply with an acknowledgement of our concerns, and that they presumably will be taken seriously. Simply ignoring parents when they reach out with feedback and concerns fosters frustration and a feeling of apathy. I hope that in addition to finding more ways to improve the current calendar and mitigate the negative impacts it has had in our community, that the district also consider improvements in public communication in ways that make parents feel they have meaningful say in district decisions that impact their kids and their family. Thank you for your consideration. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no additional public comment on agenda items. That takes us into our information agenda, starting with student highlights.
Don't I have any specific highlights, but I did tell them that I would speak about one of our upcoming programs.
Thank you.
So last year we had a teacher was involved with a STEM camp on the Wyoming side, and because of the past closure, they ended up hosting it at the Alta Library. And then that prompted just more discussion. Where we have our STEM class this year is that we'll be hosting Camp Invention this year for the first time. So we're excited to bring that programming to our school. And the camp will be held the week of June 16th this year. And right now we have 3 rendezvous teachers that will be hosting, and they're going to be reaching out to hopefully connect with the middle school to get some, they call them counselors in training. So perhaps 6th or 7th grade students that come and kind of help with the programming. Right now, we've only opened it up to current 3rd and 4th grade students. So they would be our rendezvous students next year. And just depending on the application and what we feel like we can handle in our first year, we may be able to open up and extend that opportunity to others. So just excited to bring that program to our district. It'll be really exciting. Right now, they've just barely pushed it out. I think we have 6 kids signed up. So as we get that in our newsletter, hopefully that will just expand and grow. And, you know, it's just going to be our first year, lots to learn. And hopefully that'll be something that we can make a staple for our school moving forward. Ideally, it would serve students 1st through 7th or 8th grade. So we'll start kind of small and just see who signs up and what our capacity is, and then how we might grow the program from there. So, yes.
Just, that's a week-long camp?
Yeah, I think it goes from 9:30 to 3, the 16th through the 20th.
And you'll send that out in your newsletter?
Yep, we have our upcoming family STEM night is February 27th. So there'll be a table there with more information, hopefully catch some of our families as they come to that as well. Which is an awesome evening, because I think that's the same day that the middle school is doing their STEM Olympics on their 4+1 day. So it'll be an awesome day and evening of STEM, I guess, in our public schools. What day is that? Awesome. And that was kind of a little pointy dink in planning, but it sort of worked out. It was awesome.
It's a good day.
As the barriers to open it up to other 3rd grade students from like Teutonia and Victor, are
That's
those?
exactly who they're open to, yeah.
Oh, so that's across the board
3rd graders, current 3rd graders in all 3 schools,
in the
yep.
district, got it.
Yep,
So there'll be the Ruse kids.
so they'll be the Ruse school kids next year, yeah, so next year's 4th and 5th. Yeah.
That's great.
Sounds great.
See how many we get, and hopefully we can open that up a little broader and catch a few more students, so.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you bet.
This is into our superintendent administration report. We all have access here too. Megan, if you're there, anything that you want to talk us through or highlight specifically, or someone that you've sent to kind of hit the.
Yes.
Hit
Can
the
you hear me?
points? Yeah, we can pretty well.
Okay, perfect. Yep, I can start with the attendance check-in at this top here, and then we're going to jump right into student achievement because we finished up our winter assessments, and then I'll let the principals touch base on their key initiatives if you have any questions for them. Megan Bybee, thank you so much for putting these charts in. They're beautiful.
Them up on the board here.
I can.
Yeah, one.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're gonna put them up on the projector real.
Perfect. So our average daily attendance has gone up, and Megan did a great job with this chart here to show how that impacts our support units, which means the amount of funding we have to staff the growth of our students. And because we've gone up to 92.5%, it looks like, and Meg, correct me if I'm wrong, we're up 1.83 support units. And then Meg, do you want to explain the protection piece and then the total units? Does that mean that we have 5.5 leeway with hiring for next year is what I'm understanding?
Sort of, yes.
We're still
Yes.
kind of getting set up.
Sorry.
Give us-
That's okay.
I can explain this.
You can
Okay.
get it set up first if you need to.
We kind of got a castle right now we're looking at.
Yeah, thank you.
I've been to that castle. I took students there.
I was gonna say, you've been to like half the castles in Europe.
I know, I
That
took
doesn't
students
count.
there.
Cool.
Where is that?
That one, I believe it
That's
might
it.
have been in, I wanna say it's either Austria or Germany. I think it was somewhere in
It's
Austria.
Germany.
I went to a lot of castles on that trip.
There's a lot of castles in the street. Did you get bored of it?
No, I loved it.
You love castles?
No, I just love traveling.
Oh.
And actually, I love the trip. I'll tell you about that later, sorry.
So, one of the pieces, there are two versions of attendance data, right? We have our Infinite Campus or our student information system data that is reporting like how often kids are here at the high school and middle school level where you have multiple attendance periods, right? It's a period count that gets tabulated into looking at what our attendance percentage is. The other important and we've been reporting those numbers to you. Perhaps more important is how the state determines attendance data. It is highly complicated, so I'm not going to explain how, but it is what informs our funding. Last year, or every year, sort of like a sick leave bank, districts each contribute a little bit to the protective unit in case there are districts who have an extreme change in their number to be able to keep your funding within 3% of what it's been, right? So if we all of a sudden lost 1,000 students, we would not collapse because of a change in funding. So the protective unit in 23-24, which funded this year, right? So everything that happens now impacts next year, not the current year. So was 3.95. And this is because there was a shift from prior to COVID, we were ADA, which is like average daily attendance. During COVID, they switched to enrollment, right? So we said this is how many kids are enrolled in our district and taking classes. And because of attendance guidelines due to the ill health of our students, we went to enrollment. When we went back to ADA, last year was the first year that the funding was going to be determined off of our actual average daily attendance again. There was a bigger protective unit because people were to keep people within 3%. If your attendance isn't very good, you could drop below that. So the protective unit that each of the districts paid last year was 3.95. So we earned 94.68 units for attendance at the midterm of last year. And let me back up all the way for that. This is a projection. It is not a final number. Our allocation will be determined by the first 12 weeks, the best 28 weeks, and it calculates a lot. I will say, in looking back multiple years, it is pretty similar to our midterm because first 12 happens in that before the midterm So it's a good number to check in on, but this isn't a final number, but just something to know. Also, with our focus on attendance, it's a check-in of how are we doing. So we earned 94.68 units for our attendance last year. This was 1,790 ADA. When we look at that number of ADA compared to the enrollment of 1986, that's almost 200 students that we didn't have counted in that average daily attendance. Does that make sense? Which is quite a bulk of students when we enrollment versus attendance, 200 kids. When we look at, and then with the protection, that dropped our numbers. When we look at the midterm ADA for this year, and we see what have we reported so far, our enrollment December 1st is up by 3 from December 1st last year. They were at 1989, so pretty similar in size. But our ADA in the midterm is up 50. So one question we have asked is, have the efforts around attendance made a difference? And there have been multiple different efforts. Yes, we're up 50 students being counted, or 50 attendance units. That equals a support unit count of 96.51, which is an increase of 1.83. So that's great, almost 2 units. The protection is where there is going to be a big shift. So last year, the protection was almost 4. This year, it's only 0.27. Now that we're back into ADA, you don't have to give such a big difference this year. So that's 3.6 less than what we had last year, which does say the total units projected when compared with the previous mid-year projection that funded this year is actually up 5.5 units.
Which is a significant amount of money.
Which is a significant amount of money. When we look at what a unit is, so this is part of our salary-based apportionment. So it says these are the number of students you have in your district, you should be getting an allocation for this much. It is equal to 1.1 certified staff members. That's 1.0 something of a certified teacher. I have actually the numbers, I just don't have it in front of me. Without opening my email, and then a 0.07 of a pupil personnel, which would be a counselor or a school psychologist or a speech therapist, or and then it is a 0.07 admin, and then a 0.3575 of a classified staff member. So when you put all that together, right, it's 1.1 of a certified position, which is just that alone is a pretty significant amount of money for the allocation. So that's,
So do you think the attendant, like looking at this? You said you guys were looking at the attendance things and seeing if they were working.
right. So we did a few different things, right? One is we talked about attendance a lot,
Yeah.
right? We did some education around attendance. We also cleaned up some things in the student information system in how we're recording attendance, you know, and trained staff in what all of that recording really means.
Yeah.
And how that impacts counts. And so, you know, I think we just cleaned it up by actually having a focus on it and shared more with parents than we have in the past around attendance.
Okay.
When we look at sort of days in the week, I did do an attendance by day for the last 3 years, this year so far, and then 23, 24, and 22, 23.
These are just averages.
These are, yeah, our average percent attendance. So Monday, pretty much the same across the board. I will say having numbers in the 90s for this is impressive, right? We do have actually a pretty good attendance rate. Tuesday also still pretty similar. Where we do see a difference is Thursdays this year is kind of holding at that 95. Where our, you know, 94 and 93 the previous years, and that Friday was typically our lowest day at a 93. So having our final day of the week being at a 95, but Thursday to Thursday, you know, that's nice to see that we haven't just transferred the problem to a different day of the week in terms of attendance.
You know, my benchmark, and Kathleen could probably give you more accurate numbers, is my benchmark for support units is about 125 grand per unit. So times that by 5.
It's a lot.
Mhm. It also informs as we move into the budget process, and we talked about this in the finance committee, you know, do you do your budget off of an expected 91, which is what we budgeted for this year, or do we change that to maybe a 95, which may still be conservative budgeting, but maybe more realistic to where we work. We don't want to budget at a 91 again and come out super flush. Or we might. That depends on the budget strategy, so that was just our attendance update.
Good job. That's good.
Meg, do you want me to move right in? Oh, sorry, I shouldn't. call
Yeah,
you.
yep. Should we go to the report card? Do you have that, Meg?
Yep, I do.
Okay.
Okay, and so then let's look at where we are in terms of achievement. So I have shared our report card with you. This is the format that, the beginning is the format you're used to seeing. I'm gonna actually switch down to some of the visuals that I included as we look at this. So one of the pieces that we look at really is no matter where we're starting, if we're not growing, we're not going anywhere, right? So one of the questions we look at is, are we growing? When we look at the IRI, which is our K-3 state required reading assessment, and I believe I had let you know that they were re-looking at this. Did I let you know that they are going to keep it the same? I just don't know the timing of when I knew that to know whether or not I told you. In some ways, that's a relief that we aren't going to be changing to a whole other data system, that we are going to, the state is staying with iStation. So we can have the same piece of K-3 reading data. I think the RFP is 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah. So that's nice. It's nice to have some continuity.
For the next 5 years.
It might be 3 years. I
That's okay.
didn't look at the RFP, but it's at least more than 1 year. So when we look at fall to winter, I have 3 data points here for each grade. So kindergarten is the blue. What would, first would be if we have anything out of order here, if we have certain grades performing above a grade that is below them or something, or above them or something like that, that would be, we have K1, 2, 3, it is in the expected format, but you can see there's an increase in each of the grades. There's a notable, little bit more of an increase in the kindergarten level, which is exciting to see, right? That foundation. But we see from September to November to January, and January often is a little bit of a tougher data point because we just had a massive Christmas break, right? This year, because of sort of where Christmas falls, it was a pretty long amount of time from school. So that's nice numbers to see, also in January. And so that is just a look at, are we increasing? Yes, we are. The trend is up on each of the grades, right? And with kindergarten having, looks like the highest amount of growth from their starting point. When we look at this for a couple years, right, we can see that fall to winter. So this is September to January for multiple years. I don't know if it's easier for me to stand or put my mouse. And again, we do see a trend of kindergarten having this fall to winter kind of steeper trend line, if we can point it that way. But this year's looks much stronger than it's typical. One question is, over time, is our overall trend also improving in terms of where we're going with K-3 reading? This also is, if you look at the beginning starting point of 22-23 of September to 24-25 of September, right? Our starting point is not consistently up, but on a positive trajectory for the most part. That is our one way to look at that K-3 data. To look at the numbers, right, you can go back to the top to look at each of those grades. We see progress occurring from fall to winter for each of those grades.
Stop you for a second. Would it be possible in the future to make a graph with more legible? It's so tiny, I really can't see it. So that
some of it is maybe it's easier for me to Yeah, use it as its own
Like, just
document
graph.
rather than
Yeah,
embedded
we
in.
could just click on it.
Yep.
And open it up and.
Oh, I just
Shrink
zoomed
it.
in.
I'm zoomed in, I still can't read it, and I don't have the vision. But usually I like to label the axes, and it's just really hard to read. And I feel like the second graph, I think that it would be easier to represent that in a different way. We can talk about how to
Mhm.
represent it, because I feel like you might be seeing.
One of the pieces that I'm trying to do this year is taking graphs that are in whatever products we have, rather than creating graphs, so that there can be consistency in the way that we're showing the data.
Yeah, well, don't do it this way, because this
Yeah.
is not, it's
Yeah.
not helpful. But I'd also like to say statistically, like, we are seeing maybe a couple trends, but I feel like statistically, it's not significant.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. When we look at, the reading above the third grade, so we use the IRI for K3, when we look at 4 through 8, we have both reading in English taking place, those assessments, as well as Spanish. So a population we've discussed is newcomers. One of the things that's important to know is what foundational skills they have in their primary language. We also use the Spanish assessment and reading for students that are enrolled in a dual language program to assess progress in learning to read in their second language of Spanish for students who are native English speakers. One of the, as we talk again about growth, on this assessment, there is a national, a standardized or a national growth percentile measure, right? So, and the 50th percentile, if you're thinking about a bell curve, the 50th percentile for growth would be growing like a typical student that was in this normative group. The question is, are we growing more than average or less than average? In this, on the star reading from fall to winter of this school year, 61% of the students who took the star reading assessment grew at or above that 50th percentile. So that's a number that is nice to see, that are at the top of our bell curve, or 61% of are meeting at least that 50% or higher. First, the growth percentile. So comparing the change in scores from fall to winter across out of their normative group. In the Spanish, we are also seeing 68.6% of the students who took the test in Spanish were showing at or above average growth. We also see the breakdown of the top score in this 33.4% on this is on the English star reading assessment, had high growth. 27.6 had typical or average growth, and 39% had low growth, right? So again, some of these reports, and then if you go down to a class level to an individual student level, tells us, right, who is growing and who is for who to focus on. Similar thing in the Spanish. We have that same graph for the star reading Spanish. When we go to the next, if we are looking at math, so star math is done 1st through 8th, because there's not a state assessment for math at the K3 level. We had 63.3% showing at or above typical growth in English, and 52.7% showing at or above typical growth in Spanish. And growth is something to look at differently than proficiency in just, you know, are we moving kids? Where are we making those changes? Where is our instruction having the most impact?
Can I ask a question about the math scores?
Yep.
So the star math in Spanish, that is, the dual kids as well taking that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and your native Spanish speakers. So you can see 93
Yeah, I
students
saw
took
that,
it.
93. I was like, that's a huge number.
And so, I mean, we have newcomers that are taking that as well as
dual.
But if you look at how many students, more students actually took the star reading in
Yes,
Spanish.
700. Oh.
156.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Mhm.
So just because maybe I'm not picking up everything, there's no overlap in the numbers, right, that you're showing here, or is there,
There is some overlap.
Okay,
There are
okay.
students in dual have taken it in both.
and they're represented in both?
Yeah, so that's what I.
Okay.
But just in math, not in the reading as well, or no?
In both.
Okay.
So we have students that we're looking at both, right? So if I can show you more of what I'm able to do in Spanish, but our end goal is that students are able to do this in English.
Right, and that's the separation it shows,
Yeah.
okay.
Can we take a step back? Can you explain this graph to me? Just kind of break it down, just pick the 63.3%. So I see the 63.3% is the overall.
Right, it's the green, if you were to look at the color, right? So it's saying that 63.3% of the students who took the test in both fall and winter, right? Because you'd have to have the growth number. Performed at or above the 50th percentile for growth, right? So I choose where we put this percentile.
And that's based on a national.
Right, I said the 50th. We could say 40th. But on STAR, we've typically gone as a district looking at it as the 50th percentile.
Nationally, they read 40, aren't they?
Depends on the model, right? So, and there's a reason we chose 50 for this, and that's because the ISAT, the performance benchmark that was chosen was the 60th. So the IRI is the 40th percentile, the ISAT is the 60th, the 50th is the national average. From an RTI or MTSS kind of background, 40th is that cutoff for intervention. But if your goal is proficiency on an exam that's at the 60th percentile for more predictive power, we chose to look at it as the 50th.
But 40th on a national scale is where they qualify for intervention.
Well, it's again, like just the research around kind of best practice, which also includes sort of capacity of schools of how many students are we providing more specialized instruction to. Half your student body would be extremely challenging. But typically the guidelines from like the National Institute for RTI, which is response to intervention, is the 40th percentile for your typical kind of screening measures from different companies. The 40th percentile is typically the benchmark, which is why IRI is that.
And these charts and everything, these come from STAR.
Right, and that's so one of the things I've noticed is we're presenting data in all sorts of ways. Depending on who's making it or who's putting it in, we're gonna get 5,000 charts, and so this year I was like, I really want to present from the company so that this chart can be reproduced consistently in different environments, right? Versus I can go and do a bunch of stuff with it, but then what if I'm not there? Now we're looking at different numbers.
And so the different colors on the left. So I understand, what is that low growth?
The low growth would mean any student who didn't grow at the 50th growth percentile, right? So that
So 36.7%.
we're below the 55th percentile for their growth. So again, if you look at,
So, and then 33% had that growth of 63.3 or higher. Is that how you read?
no, so it's the 63.3 is the two green added together.
Because they're at the 50th or above.
Right, so green, the two greens, it's 50th and above. Well, it's actually,
Okay, so that's.
yeah. So, but to me, actually, and this was the next part I was gonna talk about when we go back is, so are we growing wherever we start from? And what does that look like? Is the bottom piece under the percentages? Is this more than usual? So when we have a year, we've made a big bunch of change, you actually expect to see either stagnant or drop in your performance, right? If you take on something big, you tend to see initially less than positive changes in your data. When you look below this, that 63.3% at meeting growth is 2% down from last year.
I guess I've never really seen it like that where you're.
And then 4% down in reading. So we are seeing less fall to winter growth in these than we saw last year.
And that could be potentially the timing of the second test, right, which was like right before or right after Christmas or that.
And we
second
try to
test.
do it in the same time frame, right, between each, so it's January.
Yeah, I guess I just feel like the 63.3 then is somewhat misleading because you're.
Is it typical, I guess, it's when you're comparing growth. Are we growing like most districts grow kids? Are we growing a little better than districts? That's what it's kind of saying.
So I would say in the 60th percentile, 60%, 70%, like 70%, when you say, is that kind of high achieving, right? You see 70% of the students are achieving above. Would you say, like, not
For
here,
growth?
in general, if you saw that 70%?
I would
that
say-
be excellent, right?
Yes, and I'd say for achievement, when we think about if the benchmark is set at the 40th percentile, if we are doing what the normative group would do, if the benchmark's 40th, we should see 60% proficient. Right?
Right, but it's how you set the benchmark. Yeah.
Right, so on the IRI, at minimum, if we want to be like most, we would want 60% would be our goal. That would mean we're like the curve of the group that's taken this. I would prefer to be better than that personally, so goal setting, I think I would, 70 would be a great thing to strive for, right?
Yeah.
But at minimum, getting to that average, right? So for the ISAT, if the benchmark is set at the 60th percentile, at minimum, we want to see 40% proficient. Right?
I think it would be really helpful. I don't know if I'm adding more work for you, I apologize, but if you could.
No, it's
just,
good.
like, write a blurb,
Uh-huh.
like a sentence or two, like a caption, under each graph. So if people are reading this, it's,
Mhm.
to me, it's hard to read and,
Mhm. I can definitely do that. Yeah, and as I said, my goal this year was I've asked before, like, how do you want it? There's so many ways we can show you data. There's so many, and so
It's good
it's
to be
great to get the
consistent, yeah.
feedback. And it is, but as I said, for me, 2 goals. One was like, I'm just gonna start throwing out. And the feedback helps because it is something we can reproduce each time once we land on this is what we want to see.
Okay.
The last graphs, and these are interesting, right? These are super interesting. And take a little to get to know, is a look at where kids started and where they ended. So this, okay. So, and this is breaking it down even a little bit more, right? So that red band is students who started between the 0 and 10th percentile. And then the 10th to 20th, the 20th to 49th, the 50th to 84th, and then 85th and above. So one of the reasons it's nice to break it down into 5 groups is, are we moving those top high achieving kids? Hard to tell if you're only looking at the proficient or not, right? So breaking it down even a little bit more into, are we moving the kids that are the farthest from the benchmark? Are we moving the ones that are close, right? How are we going to improve achievement? We need kids to be growing, but we want all kids growing.
And so this is an average of K through 12?
So this is the ISIP, which would mean it's K3 reading. So the ISIP English, that would be the EN, overall by grade. But this is all grades.
What are like the down, like, what are?
Yeah,
What are
so,
the departures?
so if we look at this, and this is where I want to get up, but I'm gonna then block that. So for the group that started below the 10th percentile, if you look below,
You can use your pointer on the computer.
yeah, below the 10th percentile, it's saying what happened with these students, right? Nobody moved down because there isn't anywhere to go, right? So that's, we won't celebrate that number, but we did have 75% stayed the same, 17.2% moved up, right? So there's some ways to look at out of this group, what happened, right? Who are we moving? This is, I think, super interesting to just look at okay, where's our instruction making the biggest impact? Where are we making big moves? And where is our instruction not reaching? So for instance, that 85 to 1 percentile and above, we need to do a little pushing.
And it's interesting, this green 40 to 8, is that, can't read that.
85th,
So that has 4 different patterns. One, the middle, the most in that range is.
So it goes, one just mentioned that last bottom on the right. Down here, why do I really want to go there for some reason. This tiny one down here is meaning they didn't have a winter.
So that green that drops.
So
all
it
the way down.
says NA. I don't know why in this product it would leave them in there.
Why, they didn't have a winter what, like.
They didn't have a-
Like maybe it's a student who left the district.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
There are some that didn't test in the winter. And so those are like those that go down to that bottom where there's gray.
So is that
It's-
skewing all your numbers though?
Yes, that would.
So when you run those growth numbers, those percentiles, they have to have a winter.
Okay,
You will have kids, when you just do overall achievement, yes, it's the group that took the winter, right? If you're just doing proficient in winter, it may not be kids that had a score in fall. Does that make sense? So when you do proficiency, it's whoever was in that test setting.
And I would say this number 40 to 85, like that's a pretty big.
Group.
Group.
Mhm.
It seems like that could be broken up.
And on this one, like I said, I didn't make it, so, but yes. And then the second one is star reading. So we have some similar looks. You can see, and we talked about this, the middle school, not everybody took this. With the move to trimesters, we had a little bit of a, kind of, when are we doing everything? And so, I don't know, Anne Marie, if you want to talk about, I know we're missing some middle school numbers, so some of this, you'll notice the gray group is larger, that they didn't have a test in the period that this was run for.
So what's really interesting about this one is like what Natalie was just saying, it did break down those percentiles even more in the reading
Mhm.
one than in the math. So I wonder why Star did that.
Yeah, again, so
I
ISIP versus star, I don't
There's
know.
more variation.
Maybe, I don't
Different.
Mhm.
I think that's interesting.
But and so this is, again, just like as we look at our achievement, when we look at growth, when we look at changes, these are things we need to be paying attention to and seeing if there are trends over time of, we really aren't doing much with this group, or our instruction is really meeting the needs of this group. That's something that's good for us to know, to learn what's working and where we need to focus.
Based on these graphs, it looks like the 0 to 50 is soon the biggest improvement.
Right, so all of the efforts on sort of intervention may be working, but our tier 1 isn't creating major growth, is something you could potentially say for what this says.
Could you also say, it seems like with reading, you're seeing that lower percentile is improving at a better rate than the math is?
Yeah,
And that's
so,
what we've seen before, that we've seen increases in reading, but we're not seeing increases in math.
mhm.
But
Yeah.
that went along with, we had a full reading. We got everyone the dyslexia training, we did that whole big reading push 3 years ago, elementary, something like that, what was that?
I think there was a reading and
I
a.
think nationally too, math performance is not as strong as reading.
Really?
Mhm. Like if you were to look at the NAEP, which I would say is the one assessment that you can kind of, it's because it's the same test given in every state. Where if you look at state, people have different assessments, so it's hard to compare states, but the NAEP is the one. Math achievement is not as strong, but yes, math is an area where we are. And the other piece, and this was a different graph that I think I showed maybe at the beginning of the year when we first looked at data, is we see a larger change from spring to fall, so over the summer in math than we do in reading. So in terms of retention of skills or perform, like losing ground over summer, we see a much larger change to math.
Like positive change. Math or
Negative change.
Sorry, yeah.
Or,
Which-
well, downward.
Yeah,
Which I was speaking with someone about that, it seems like with reading, kids are still reading over the summer, and also with reading, you can take home reading and you can read at night. A lot of the kids have reading assignments, whereas math is not as encouraged. And I was speaking with Angela, and she was speaking about how she wants to do math nights, family game nights, and things like that to increase math. I thought that was a really great idea.
Yeah. And I do know, for instance, like at Ruse, I know they're sending home family math games is the homework to kind of get in and develop a habit around some of that. So absolutely. And I do think, as you said, a more natural sort of routine in a home is centered around reading, where math is not as, I would say, typically seen in terms of that. Yeah. So supporting families and how to continue that engagement over the summer.
yeah, so I mean, this is all like really informative, like, what's your high level, like, what's the institutional reaction when you look at this, where are you like, practically speaking, what adjustments do we make, or if any? Or like, what do we stay the course on, what do you like, worries you, like, just high level,
Right.
the temperature check on
I
this?
think 2 points of data, never gonna make any decisions around, right? I think when you look, we have known historically, our performance in math is less strong. And so math is definitely an area. It's also, it is impacted by reading, right? So I mean, I think literacy is a foundation to success in our world. So I think in both we need to improve. I can say, on when you break things down into even smaller subgroups, I mean, we need to take responsibility for every kid growing, and we know that the diversity in our classrooms has increased in our district. And so in my mind, it is both, and we need to bring more of that language into math, create conversations around math, that it's not just about knowing a calculation, right? Not just being able to add, but being able to reason, and like, it's that depth of math knowledge beyond the rote, I can follow the standard algorithm, that's really where we need to push. Yeah, which is gonna be impacted by reading, so
This might not be a question for you, it might be for the principals, I'm not exactly sure. In their collaboration with the teachers, are the teachers looking at these graphs, or are they looking when they're working together? Like, are these the ones that they're going over to try to figure out their trends, or what?
typically you're going to pull this from a school level,
Okay,
right? So at a K3, the IRI, we are reporting this as a district, not at, this isn't Victor's graph versus Driggs's versus Teutonia.
Okay.
Right? So some of these, yes, you're looking at the proficiency, you're looking at growth, but you're looking at it more at a school level. Some of the schools have the whole grade, right? So they would be breaking this down to grade levels.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, and then really, you're gonna go down to classroom level for a lot of these, which we're not, is not a district level report.
No, my only point was, like, on the graph where it shows, like, this is the
Where we-
trend, like, all these people are growing, how are we gonna get the upper levels to?
That's more, when this exact graph would be an admin team level graph, you can pull this same one for a school or for a grade.
Okay. I see.
Of where are we moving kids. This is a nice way to see that breakdown. And then it would be, what did that look like in 23, 24? What did that look like in 22, 23? What do we know we changed? What's different? Again, it's always, I think this is one piece of data, right? The star is one piece of data. There are some kids who I know are phenomenal math students who don't perform on this type of assessment. We're gonna triangulate that with the other data that we have.
Thanks.
And I'll keep, I don't know, maybe each month I'll just bring it to land on like, yes.
And so are we still discussing graphs and different ways to put benchmarks in to compare from year to year? In terms of comparing this year to next year to the next year? Are we
Yes.
still deciding on?
Well, so again, I have built some. Right, we've created some, but they've been created where I'm pulling the data. And so that's where, as I said, one of the pieces that I'd love to see is our sustainability and how we look at data so that it's something we can use every time we go to look at data rather than somebody having to create it all. And so we are still exploring them, right? That one that we looked at with all the colors that change was one that we looked at together and, you know.
Thank you for the rundown.
Yep.
We can move just forward into some questions about school level reports or department level reports, if anyone has any. There's a lot here, so. Oh, Megan, go ahead, sorry. You had.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just coughing. No, please, if you have any questions, most of our administrators are available, or I can try to answer questions as well.
I don't have any aside from just assuring everyone I've read all these, and these reports are, I say it every time, but contextualizing it for me within the key initiatives has been a pretty much a game changer for me looking at this. So if anyone else wants to dive deeper, feel free.
Should you want me to go through it, man, or do you want me to just, are you good?
Well, yeah, we kind of, I mean, that's up to, I think, always here.
I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
Okay, well, all right. Excited to be here. Cool opportunity to share some of this data. One of the first things we put on, really some highlights in comparison from this year to last year. As you look at that, we're talking letter grades there, percentage of the kids that have letter grades. So if you look last year, it was about 50% the A. So, you know, we're up over 60% there, you know, which I think is going to be why the B's are down a little bit and the C's are down a little bit. We're seeing better grades across the board that way. And obviously the D's and the F's are falling. So, you know, obviously some good work there by our students, you know, teachers, you know, all that good stuff happening there. Pretty exciting.
All the classes at THS.
Yep, percentage wise there, yep. Graduation rate last year, 97.7%. So, you know, that's pretty high. I don't know what the national average is, but
Can we go back to the graph?
yeah, absolutely.
Do you know, is it possible to put error bars on those bars?
You know what, Mr. Zog actually put this together over the last day
I
or
think
two
that
while I
would
was
be
out,
helpful
but
to look at that.
yep, for sure.
Our graduation rates are very high.
Yeah, and up from, you know, previous years as well, you know, we're always in that, you know, a lot of that high 90s, mid 90s, you know, very successful there, which says a lot to our teachers and our students, and they're working very hard. Questions from the town hall meeting, how many AP and college courses are taught? So there's a list there of what we've got, everything from AP calculus, you know, pre-calculus, statistics, AP English, AP Lit, AP Biology, government, and then obviously, you know, IDLA, CEI, and so on and so forth. So
Percentage kids with AP classes, just off the top of your head.
would be.
Lisa?
Lacey, do you want to make a
What
stab at that? What percent of our kids are taking an AP class?
AP and dual, I don't know what percent, but we might have the highest percent in the state of Idaho, is what I've heard. I know that we have the highest percent of kids taking them through IDLA. And most of our kids doing the IDLA are taking the dual and the AP classes. And that is what the rumor I have heard recently is that we are the highest percentage wise in the state of Idaho.
I've heard the same, Lucy.
That's good because the majority of them are passing them.
Yeah.
I mean, every now and then we get one that doesn't pass, but it's very rare when we have a kid that doesn't pass.
Well, and it also signals an extreme demand for like the top
Mm-hmm.
tier.
Yeah.
People that are setting high standards.
Absolutely.
We have some kids that they take 2 of the AP dual classes in person at the high school. And then the other 4 classes are just in the IDLA lab doing IDLA, like dual credit and AP classes. I mean, some kids are very, very driven and very high achieving.
Yep. And last year, I believe we had 1,087 college credits earned by our seniors. So we have the highest percentage in the state of Idaho.
Mm-hmm. College credits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at this point, how many classes are being taken through IDLA or Teton Online School by THS students?
So do you want just the AP and dual, or do you want all online?
Oh, yeah, I'm curious as to.
I don't know offhand, but I could probably figure it out sitting here if you wanted me to, like going in and just counting, like doing roster checks for like this trial or something like that. I could have access.
It's something that would be interesting to know, I
Mhm.
think, to see where how the in-person classes are balancing out against the online classes.
My only thought with that is, I know a bunch of kids that took this try off because it's
Skiing. Right, this trimester is,
they took off a bunch now and then they're going first and.
they're doing online now.
Yeah, they're
And
doing
then in
online.
person, first and third. And do you want the number of students or the number of classes? Because some kids we have doing half day online and half day in person so that they can ski half days. So do you want
Like, I think that's.
Maybe we do both.
per class?
Yeah, and
Maybe we could bring that.
yeah.
We could bring this
I mean,
next board meeting.
Yeah,
I
not
can help you.
now,
Thank you.
because.
Yep.
You know, this is a
Yeah,
big question.
Yeah, give us a minute to go back to the lab. and
Okay.
Crunch the numbers.
And you want to break them apart from IDLA,
Yeah,
regular class, IDLA, dual AP.
I'm actually not as interested in the an AP breakout. In part, just because so many people were very concerned about not having in-person classes back during COVID. And yet this sector of our offerings has grown a lot since then. So how many kids are generally taking in person?
Do you also want me to, like, we do have also students that take classes directly through universities, not going through IDLA, not doing dual credit.
Right.
That might be a little bit harder to get, because sometimes kids do that without telling us, and then they present us with their transcript. I'm like, oh, that would have been nice to know.
Yeah.
You know, but I definitely like, because we have a partnership with CEI, for kids to get their associate's degree. And we don't have a whole lot of kids going after the associates, a lot more last year than they realized that was a really big chunk to bite off of. And they've now decided not to get the associates, but they're still going directly through CEI, getting a bunch of like gen classes, to get their gen stamp on their diploma and whatnot. But I can try to get that number, but that might not be as accurate.
I think maybe like
Yeah,
to the
surprise us.
point, yeah.
I'll do a presentation. Natalie would love, can you put me on the agenda next time and
I
I'll do
will
this
plan
little.
on it, because I think we haven't really taken a serious look yet, at least during this board's full tenure of like, what is like the breakdown of like the online versus in person. We haven't done that yet.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll collaborate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Percentage of class.
You would like to see that too?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
Wonderful. Next, couple of questions that were brought up. Why do we have a shorter lunch and why can't we steal it from pack time, right? Obviously, pack time was put together, it was lengthened this year. And the idea behind that, going from, adding the additional 20 minutes there, 25 minutes, was to allow students to finish those projects, finish those tests, right? You try and get those kids to check into one class, transfer down to another. By the time that happens, you're looking at 20-25 minutes of productive time, right? So lengthening that is going to give those kids that time to take a test, finish that test in one sitting. And that was really the idea behind the lengthening there. Realizing why we can't steal it, right? It's a class. If we take that time, you still have to have scheduled out amount of time that you do throughout the day, right? So to steal from pack time, we would have to lengthen the day or extend the number of days. So looking at how to approach that, in the future. I will say this, we do get comments, there's not enough time for lunch. If you look at our lunch time, it goes from 11:55 to 12:25 in those 30 minutes. On a regular day, everybody's through the lunch line in 10 minutes or less. You're welcome to come down and we'll buy you lunch and walk you through the process. We have teachers that volunteer to come serve every day to make sure that happens. I know Sam and I are down there every day, serving lunch, making sure that happens. And making sure we're just getting there, running 2 different lines. It's happening, and it's leaving kids an opportunity to eat, absolutely. So, in regards to that, once again, next question, we hire student engagement at the high school. Looking at that 97.7% graduation rate, grade distribution over the first term, shows we're on the rise. We're growing, we're connecting, more A's are happening, less F's, less D's. I know from a standpoint, in talking even excessive absences, right? When I came here last year, first semester, doing that EAs, everybody that fell below 90%, school board policy was, right, they lose credit, right? With students, not total number of credits lost, total number of students who lost credit was over 300 students. Okay, by second semester, 50. Okay, first trimester this year had an influx of freshmen. They're learning the ropes. We had 105, and I believe that number will continue to go down. And obviously, the board policy has changed on that. Taking that, which I think is a great thing. And we're meeting with our leadership team and what is that going to look like and how are we going to, approach that with makeup work and absences and all that. And we're working out some plans with our leadership team in the process. So really good stuff going on there. And then it looks like upcoming events. Pretty exciting stuff coming up. We got state BPA coming up, music, obviously SAT this month, next month, March 11th, and so forth. We had access testing began today. So a lot of neat stuff going on and we're excited to see how it goes. So like I said, we're just really, a trimester in to this trial, but we're excited. We're liking the things we're seeing. We're liking the feedback we're getting, and we're excited to do it. So, yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
On the loss of credits for excessive absences.
Yeah.
How all is that handled?
Yeah. What we do is really, Mr. Zog and I, every morning we have a report run of who's missed the absence or who missed class yesterday. We go through that list and we meet with every one of those students. We have a discussion with them. Hey, why were you absent? Why weren't you there? We have that discussion on, how many absences it takes to lose that credit, and all that has gone on over the last little bit. And then we met with every one of them at the end of the trimester. We had a conversation with every one of them. In fact, we even offered an opportunity that if they would improve and show improvement, we would look at getting those credits back. And those discussions, obviously showing, hey, we've learned our lesson, it was something we lost credit with, but let's get it back and let's get back and play there. And so we've really worked that through and sending, that information home to parents, meeting with each and every student and really helping them buy in to understand, how that process works, so on and so forth. So we had an assembly at the beginning of the year to remind everybody, hey, how this process works. You can have up to 5 absences in the trimester. On the 6th, you will lose credit. Going through and discuss, what is required by the policy, whether that's, bringing a doctor's note, whether that's, communication from a coach or travel coach or something like that. So I'm sorry, I'm getting long-winded here.
You're good.
Yeah.
What do you mean get it back?
From the standpoint of, we're looking at it and saying, okay, you've missed, this many
But I still pass. the class with
attendances,
them
you
in
still
A.
pass the class with the A, and that's a hard conversation, right? How do we keep those kids engaging and saying, man, if I fall behind, how am I gonna graduate? How am I gonna get to this point? And so our conversation was, look, if you can turn around this next semester.
This attendance.
Yeah, you turn this attendance around, you're showing up to your class, you're having, 4 or less tardies, you're not losing any credit due to absences this next trimester, you're passing all your classes, you're not having these disciplinary infractions where the teacher's sending you down, anything like that. You're turning those corners, you're showing that improvement. We're gonna go back and get you that credit back. We're gonna say, hey, look, you've learned your lesson and we can do that. And we've really tried to work with each kid
And you can
based on each trimester.
You can do that within the calendar year.
Mhm. So, yeah, so we've worked with them in that way. And a lot of those kids learn their lesson, they work through it, and they get that credit back. So, as you come in, you realize, hey, as a freshman, this is my first time through, and, maybe their attendance isn't where it should be that first time, and they're struggling with some of those things. So it's a great learning opportunity. It's a real opportunity for them to learn. So, yeah.
The requirements for the doctor's notes is something that I've gotten quite a few emails about.
Yeah.
Is that a requirement that they have the doctor's note, or is it something that the administration can require if there are concerns?
So it's actually in the actual policy that requires that. It's something that we ask that, they turn in within those first 72 hours, right, of doing that. I think still at every point you can still say, hey, as an administrative team, we meet with those individuals and we say, hey, what can we do to help you? What can we do to support you? And that's really what we're trying to work through and do on an individual level. But we still want to have a policy there that is supportive of the community. And
Well, the comments that I've gotten from a lot of parents have to do more with the kid is obviously sick. The kid obviously should not be at school, but going to the doctor is expensive and kind of pointless.
So I haven't gotten any emails about that.
I've gotten some.
Can I jump in really quick? We are working on amending the attendance policy to be more clear. I want parents in the community to know that administration just needs to talk with parents. I'm a mother. If my kid's home sick with the flu for 2 days, I'm not going to take him to the doctor and get a note. Those are 2 absences that are going to happen. We are reasonable human beings. And I think the miscommunication with this has gone because of the way that we edited the policy, and we apologize for that. So we're just asking families to reach out to our administration. We're able to exempt sicknesses within reason, and we want to work with families. We want to help kids do makeup work and pass their classes. And so we're going to make that very clear. The high school team because it is a credit earning institution, they are coming up with a matrix that is easy to understand, that's written by teachers and the admin team. And so we will be able to clearly identify the difference between excused and unexcused and how absences can be exempted.
And Megan, can you also clarify either later, just how those who are in, school sports, but not school sports related absences versus non-school, school sports related absences, you know what I mean? Like ski team is not
Yeah.
school sports.
Yeah, and I can speak to it too if you want. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, that process works, if that student would qualify with the high school eligibility, which is they're passing their classes, right? Then they're eligible to go and participate, and they would fall under the same thing as same guidelines as if they played on the football team that was sponsored. We would just need their coach to shoot us an email that says, hey, they were there in attendance and verify. It's as simple as
And
that.
it's also,
If they're, I'm sorry, do you want me
the
to?
travel, they do reasonable travel as well.
Mhm.
It's usually like the day before and the day after the
Mhm.
event.
And we've met with several individuals that say, hey, due to the travel event, we had to leave Thursday instead of Friday or we came back and missed Monday because we couldn't get a flight out on a Sunday afternoon because we didn't know if we were playing in the championship tournament until Sunday night. And we work with those individuals as they have let us know in advance, and absolutely have worked with them in every aspect.
Okay,
Yeah.
so once the revisions on the policy come out, the club sports will be treated the same as.
Yeah, and they still are. Yeah, if they meet this, if their student meets the same standard as what our team sport would, right? They're passing all their classes, they're in good attendance, all of that, right? They're treated the same. If they're not, let's say they have a student who wants to go participate, but they're not passing the class, right? Then we view it as just no different than if the parent just took them out and excused them. It's not.
So essentially what you're saying, it's like all about communication. If I'm hearing you, just.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out, talk to us, communicate with us, and we're gonna do everything we can to help everybody be as successful as they can.
The key telltale thing here is the fact that the amount of stack of students that are losing credit has diminished.
Drastically.
That to
Yeah.
me is the win-win here.
100%.
That sums it all. I mean, you can go into all these other little things about what sports and all this, but at the end of the day, if we're diminishing the amount of kids that need credit, then we're going in the right direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, like I said, and even now, removing the policy where there's the automatic take of credit, right? Because that's a hard conversation to have with a parent and a student that says, hey, I've got 80%, 87% attendance and a 92% grading class. And then by policy, you have to take that, right? By changing that, that's a great opportunity for us to say, okay, and what we're looking at are what are those natural consequences, right? I mean, you're still gonna get your 5 absences per try. I mean, you can count that as 15 sick days a year, and then you go over that, what does that look like? How do we make it uniform across the school? How do we work with everybody to find that success? We've had a number of students that have reached out and said, hey, I'd like to go visit family, or hey, we're gonna go do this. And they're gonna be off for a week or two, and we prearrange and have those conversations and say, hey, be in contact with your teachers. We literally meet with them, we meet with the parents, we're emailing the teachers saying, hey, they're gonna be gone these days. We've asked that the student who's included on the email to, reach out and be in contact, and maybe they can work out that the deadlines are still the same, right? On those assignments, or are we making them back after? So, the idea here is communication. The idea is we want everybody being successful, and we obviously have gotten rid of the impact of those EAs, and kids are improving, grades are going up across the board. There's a lot of good things happening, so we're excited.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think just in the interest of time, we should probably forge ahead to TMS.
Okay.
Demonstrate after.
Yeah. Do you think we just maybe forge through the admin report? Thank you.
Okay.
So we just wanted to highlight one section of our report that we submitted to you. You have each of these key initiatives. You go down to our fourth key initiative. It talks about our academic initiatives. And we just want to give you a quick report on what were two areas that we're focusing on that we are doing to accomplish our goal. I just had it up 2 seconds ago. Okay, there we go. So our math goal is one, increase our overall percentage of kids scoring proficient, but also to go in and minimize the gap between our English and our EL students. An area that we have been working with the state is our gap is significant. The state sees anything over 30% difference between English and non-English speaking or Hispanic students as significant. So we've been targeted for that specifically, not our math average. So in some ways, we're sending a false positive to some parents and a false negative to other parents based off of, you know, the demographic you're in. One demographic really needs to kick it in gear. Another, we're sending a false sense of there's a problem when in reality their child is scoring at or above the state average. So one of the goals that we've done, or the ways that we're reaching that goal, is through Imagine Math. So in our advisory system, twice a day we spend 30 minutes working on it's an intervention math, and it's school-wide. Second, what did I say? Twice a day. I wish. Twice a week. We spend 30 minutes each of those days working in Imagine Math. It's mass individualization. So it is targeting the grade level standards, but it will also pick up students wherever they're at. So if they're scoring at a 4th grade level, it starts them there, and then the goal is to get them to the grade level standards. So this year so far, we've passed off 10,500 of those intervention units, which we're really proud of. For us, we're really excited to be able to put an input into our system, so we can actually on the other end see, okay, was that a reliable input? So we've averaged about 23 intervention units per student. A unit takes those students anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes per time to pass up a unit. And I think another real benefit to it is that it's targeting two really important intervention areas, not only the middle, as well as the students we're trying to increase their scores, but it's also taking students that are in the top percentage and pushing them further. So I have students who passed off the 7th grade standards as a 7th grader, have now passed off the 8th grade standards as a 7th grader, and are now looking for other things that we can do to benefit them. So I think we're going to see a growth in not just the bottom up, but also our top performers in math. They're also being really challenged as well. So that's one piece that we're using to help with that specific goal.
The other part of the math change that we've made at our school this year has been a change to our CAM math class, which is now instead of it being a replacement math class, it's actually an additional math class that they take in addition to their grade level math class. And there's a benchmark that is taken at the beginning and then mid-try and the end of the try. And those kids are then measured again at those 2 points to see if they are able to move out of that course. So we're measuring their progress as we're going with that intervention math class, which again, they take in addition to their regular grade level math class. And as kids are moving out of that because they've acquired the skills they need, we then move other kids in. And so we're keeping that class moving, as well as the class roster itself is fluid. So we're able to help reach as many kids as possible this year, which we're really excited to see what that data looks like.
So it keeps them in their grade level math class, and then they receive that additional intervention class, which we really like. Instead of before, we had it set up so that it was just their intervention, and sometimes it pulled them away from their grade level targets. So now we have them in both, which we're really excited to put some inputs into the system that are across the board universal, so that as we look at the data, we'll be able to interpret it and say, hey, these two really did have an impact on this outcome. So we're excited to see how that goes.
And when did you start that the intervention program again?
We launched that about this time last year, the Imagine Math.
Okay.
CAM has been around for a while, but it was its own intervention class that replaced their grade level.
Brian, I know with the high school and the middle school, here recently you did a vertical collaboration with the math department. What's come out of that? I know it's early, I know it's the first time, but was there any lessons learned or things that addressing there?
I think one I'll share, and then so one takeaway that I've heard from our teachers was that a much better understanding of what we are doing at the middle level to prepare them for the high school. And it really was kind of an introductory collaboration for them. So I think step one was, what are all the interventions that we're doing in middle school to prepare them for what they're receiving, rather than use assumptions of why kids are coming in as they are. Let's let them know this is specifically what we're doing.
Yeah, just a little bit more streamlined understanding of what does happen when we make the math handoff, right? When our kids go up to the high school, and then just a deeper understanding of what math looks like at the middle school level.
There's some, I believe, really rich conversations that are going to come from that, whether it's curriculum. Right now we're planning, K-12 or 6-12, so we're all in alignment. 8, the 8 to 9 handout. What specifically, what data do they need in order, right, to launch 9th grade and interpret our data? Those types of conversations, those are to come. But I think it was a good.
We've never done that before.
Yeah.
We have done it before, but it's just been a while.
Yeah. Well,
But to have the time to be able to routinely have that discussion about like, okay, so this is where we're at. Are we seeing progress? What moves can we make to keep seeing that progress? That's going to be really powerful information for our teachers to have.
You guys.
Thanks.
Takes us to basin. All right.
No, your kids. Okay. So Basin, if you've had a chance to go up and see the new facility, take a second and peek up there. It's a really great setup in comparison to how we were here. We're kind of in the middle of everything. And so when a student can use the restroom, they're right in the office, they're greeting the UPS guy. Now we have kind of our own school and our own, area up here. It's been a big improvement. Downstairs, we have one TOS classroom, so students come from the high school and they take their classes down there. Upstairs, we have you have the main room, and then you have the 2 side rooms. It's a really conducive place, and these kids, for them, Basin becomes really a home. It's like a 1-room schoolhouse, and they spend all day in that little space. And I think that the change, we appreciate Miss Christian's helping us make that. It's been a really good thing for our kids. It was much more like a school than, you're housed in these 2 areas. With Basin, we've been, our initiatives, we've really been working with the high school to tighten up our communication with them. We've had some really good collaboration with the TOS to define like, what do we do, our TOS classroom, what are our roles, what are their roles, and tighten that up, how we pass students back and forth, as well as Basin, all the things that need to happen before they get to Basin in terms of the high school, all the things that we need to do on our end to communicate with the high school and make that handoff a much tighter, clearly defined process. So going through that critical roles and responsibilities has been a really good thing for, I think, both parties. A lot of times, because we didn't have a system put in place, it was too easy to assume the worst, right? Oh, they don't want to send kids to Basin versus no, they do. We just don't have a system to ensure that happens. That discussion happens monthly or whatever it is, quarterly, trimester. So that's been a good thing, defining how often we need to communicate, what needs to be communicated, who all needs to be there every time. So we just went through that process. We had some parents just show up to Basin. They dropped into the high school, kind of gotten a green light-ish. Then they dropped into base and wanted to drop a student off, and we said, actually, no, we created a process for how we would do this. Give us a day so we can sit down with your folks and make sure that you clearly understand what basing is, what basing isn't. And that happened right before here. So it was a good meeting that came from that collaboration to define how do we hand those students up to us. So we're on track. We have a big group that will graduate this year. Another awesome graduation. We would invite you to come last year. It's great to have you there. It's something special, facing graduation.
Question, I know that, several years ago, there was discussion about going to the 4-day week, and some of the Basin students expressed concern. How are they doing with the 4-day week? Are they getting the support that they need?
Definitely. I have not polled the students yet. Our attendance has been really good. Our day is a little bit longer. Our goal with Basin is to not send students home with homework. Our goal is they leave every day at 4 o'clock as a married man or woman, and a lot of them have jobs. A lot of them are going straight to adult life. And so we've had success with that extra hour. I don't have the hard data to share with you, but my impression, just having been there, we're spending a lot of time this fall, is that they're thriving. They're doing great. Our new teacher, he's thriving as well. I think having the setup that we currently have allows them to rotate through between the TOS, the in-person class, and then the assisting, the students who are in their own independent class. Really lends itself to individual help, because we always have someone now who can help them, whether it's TOS or they're in their independent class. We always have one for each for them to go to get assistance if they're stuck. So, but I can ask, I'll see how they're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you bet.
I know we're clicking along, and I don't want to keep admin folks too long, but if we could take just a 2-minute break, reconvene at no time after 7:15 if possible, so it's a little more than 10 minutes.
Could you please mute the video?
Yeah,
I'm just super careful about that. Thank you.
I couldn't ask me to read something, and I think that things haven't changed since the last week when I was a student.
She just keeps bringing the same stuff up over again, and I'm like, I already told you.
Dr. Booth?
All right, we're mic'd now, just FYI.
You're mic'd, but I don't think we're YouTubing.
Okay.
We got Victor and Ron.
Yeah, and we got a Victor rendezvous next.
Oh, we are YouTubing.
Need to check the live stream and see if we're good.
Yeah, I think we're there. I just, in moving it, I put us the wrong. The wrong group. Okay, I think that's better. Okay, so putting Megan as the speaker.
I meant to go to, I forgot.
I've got a slide here.
All
I
right,
think we're good.
I'm putting us on the big, it was
I left my.
the side by side of Megan's black screen, and I feel like that's not the appropriate way to look at it.
I will.
Right.
I think we're good
Can you get it
now.
now? No, okay. Thank you.
Takes us to Victor and rendezvous.
Okay,
The
I guess I'm
written
going first.
updates from Driggs and Tetonia for folks.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us again. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Well, to rendezvous this year, we have 3 key initiatives. And the first and most ongoing has been around behavior support. And so far this year, we have, oh gosh, where would I even start? We've done a lot in terms of behavior. So one thing that we've tried to do is just align our school-wide systems of support. And so that's why we have a behavior goal is more like the consequence procedural side. And then we have our PBIS side around giving teachers just some freedom to explore for now. What motivates students? What do they want to incentivize, et cetera? So that when we put together our ultimate goal is our multi-tiered system of support. It's an MTSS manual. That includes supports around academics, behavior, social emotional learning, attendance, et cetera. And so that's what we've been working on, and trying to see what we've out there. So we have been working with the behaviorist who has helped immensely. We added tier 2 and tier 3 behavior supports from Character Strong is our character development curriculum that we use. I've tried to include some of the newsletters in the board report just so you can kind of see some of the information that's going out. For example, this month we're talking about honesty, and it's really helpful to just have a collective, more of a universal language that we can use with kids. One of the challenges that we face at Rendezvous that's just kind of unique is that half of our student body is new every year. And so building those structures is kind of unique in that way. So when they come to us in the first place, they're comfortable in their school and their environment, even though they may have seen some other kids in, say, a sporting environment or something. It's a little different when they come to Rendezvous and there's kids from all over the valley and friend groups shift and kind of pushes their comfort level a little bit. So settling them into some routines is really important for us. And then we do have our last one is the traveling trophy. So our creative academics or our specialist teachers who are kind of feeling a little isolated. Collaboration has given us an awesome opportunity to focus and bring them in on what's going on. And so it's fantastic to have the counselor be part of that collaborative team and work with them because they're seeing all of our students. And so it's awesome for them to be brought up to speed on any students with any particular goals. They help a ton. It's so awesome to be able to send a student for just a reward. They all want to work for extra time with Mr. Starkey in PE, for example. You've seen Mrs. Cunningham's work when she brought the STEM demonstration. and the things that they're doing through their specialist classes to kind of connect all of the curriculum, which is really great. And since it came up and people were kind of talking about math, we definitely want to support our teachers with all that's going on in math through our collaborative teams. They have been phenomenal in going above and beyond, taking classes. They attend online webinars. They've been partnering with the Idaho Math Consortium, working with all of them. I go to the regional math walkthroughs. You just really, if you come sit, you know, through an or an observation cycle, and you sit in each classroom and just see the profound impact that it's having on our students, just the whole culture around math is shifting in our building. And I think that part of that too was just combining that with more parent outreach. So for the last couple of years, we've been able to host a couple of family math nights. This year, trying to work in a little bit more STEM opportunity. And last time or earlier this year, we had our family math night, and one of the math teachers actually was able to pull in some of the parents and gave a presentation on math practices and just how they can support their students at home that I think is really well received. It's awesome to just give a reach out to them. And then reading, of course, is progressing. We're getting used to our new ARC curriculum. And we've been using the toolkits this year for our intervention. And so just getting to know those and best practice and support teachers. And I've been trying to help plan a lot of those units as well, just to familiarize myself with what's happening in those groups. So we've had a lot going on for sure. You guys have any questions for me?
I went to one of those math nights because my kids did it. It was awesome. And the teachers did a fab.
You really are great.
And they taught you like the way they teach the kids. And so they'll write it up the way you explain it. Like, oh, I didn't explain that very well. Like it was nice being on that side and seeing them in their element.
I went to one of her math collaboration Fridays. I was impressed by what they were doing there.
Awesome. Very good.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Appreciate it.
Well, unfortunately, I gotta go last. Tough act to follow with. Kristen, I think, was a little more prepared than I am for this. But we've got some really awesome things going on at Victor. I've been really excited about what we've been doing. One thing we just really wanted to focus on was student achievement at the school. A couple things that we've implemented was an honor wall. And so we highlight our school motto, which is we work hard, we learn together. I'm just thinking Victor Barris. I can't think of my other one. Anyway, there they are. Sorry, we are kind, excuse me. But so we pick a student that exemplifies each of those from each grade. Our goal is to honor all of our students by the end of the year. And the kids, they really get excited about it. It's been a really positive experience. The other thing we've been doing is giving the kids bear paws, and then like this Wednesday, I'm gonna have a lunch with the principal. It was funny coming from middle school, lunch with the principal was a death sentence if you were in middle school, where one of my teachers recommend we do that, and the kids get really, really excited about it, and it's been really fun to, it gives me an opportunity to sit with the kids and just have a one-on-one experience, but that's been tremendous. Third trimester, I'm not sure what we're gonna do. That's one of the things that we're focused on determining, just to shift it a little bit and keep things new. Our second key initiative was to have school-wide assemblies, and I mean, my staff has been great about securing some things. I had two teachers write grants to get the Raptor Center to come over. So they're gonna come over third trimester and actually, the kids get to interact and see some of our birds of prey in the area, which is awesome. We actually just wrote a couple more grants to bring in some mushers. We're actually gonna be mushing around the school. The kids all get a ride. They get to learn about the dogs. So that's gonna be really exciting. The mushers, I can't remember the name of the program. One of my teachers just ran with that, but it's, they are located in Felt, and they're a wonderful couple. I'm super excited about that opportunity. Sorry, I should have brought my glasses, but with our development of an implementation of a school-wide intervention, like, we're really working on that. I think we're kind of working on that K3 as well with Kristen a little bit. Like the character strong is something we might move to as a K3, just so it is streamlined throughout K5. I mean, I think that's one of the problems Kristen sees with the elementaries is there's differences going on in all three schools. So the more we can streamline that process for her, it doesn't matter where the kid came from, they're hearing the same verbiage at all K3 schools. Last, we're really working to bring the community into the school. We felt like there was kind of, home and school. I love the idea of the math nights. I think that might be something we take on moving forward. We did have Mrs. Starkey, Wendy Starkey, took it upon herself. We're actually doing an outdoor education program, and we got a bunch of parent volunteers, and that has been phenomenal. We worked with the Kotler Ice Rink. They volunteered to give us, we didn't have to pay for it. And, we took the kids, walked the kids over to the ice rink and had a PE class, had 2 PE classes there. We're actually taking kids, weather permitting. It's supposed to be cold tomorrow, so I'm a little bummed, but we're actually taking the kids cross-country skiing and have a bunch of parent volunteers. But Wendy's done a tremendous job to put that together for us. But so those are the good things we got going on, Victor. You guys have any questions for me?
No, done. Thank you.
Yeah.
I take this forward to. Well, Megan, I'm not moving forward too fast, am I? Do you have anything to close the loop on with the admin reports, or are we ready to charge ahead?
No, it's, I'm sorry, I think we can move ahead.
All right. That takes us to our TEA report. Lacey, thanks for coming
Excellent.
in again.
Okay, so we just have a couple things on our report. We're happy to be here tonight. We talked with Megan earlier today, discussing issues that were raised by the staff members. Again, we thank you for the time that we have for our contract on Wednesdays before the meeting to meet with the members. Our meeting with Megan this morning was very productive and helpful. We have, in our meeting last Wednesday, some of the teachers had questions about the attendance policy, and what we're doing there. And so we're working with the administrators to work out details on the policies that we understand, that the parents understand, the students understand it. And so we're sure that we'll get to a very positive place there. We're very interested in several of the bills that are percolating around in Boise. We've, we're following up on the progress of these bills. Some of our staff members have met with representatives, senators, and the governor with regard to these education issues. Our staff members have written many letters to our representatives and talked to Megan about possibly doing some joint response actions with staff and administrators regarding some of these issues. So that is high on our list. One of the issues we talked about is just the issue of the mental health of our staff members. We focus a lot on the students, but that it was brought up that we probably should focus on ourselves too and each other. And so we asked to collect ideas to help with the overall mental health of the staff and to see what activities we can facilitate, ideas that came up, and we're still collecting ideas, doing like a group yoga, and having a time that the teachers can go lift weights in the weight room, having a walking group, having group discussions, things like that. And so we want to follow up on that and see what we can do there. A lot of questions about immigration issues right now. And Megan reviewed for us the newly created protocol for these issues. We'll work with the administration to make sure that these are handled correctly and as per the set protocol. So definitely an issue that we're sensing a huge need in our classrooms. We had a good discussion about the benefits of collaboration. We've been pleased with the results. We're going to start tracking some of the wins that we've experienced through our collaboration efforts. We'll continue our discussions and efforts to make sure we continue to take full advantage of our collaboration time together. And again, that's fantastic to have that time on Fridays. We talked about radon, and I know that Megan is on task with regard to getting the radon testing done. We appreciate the details that she gave us, and we're anxious to get those results and get that testing done. And just overall, we appreciate the open dialogue that we have with Megan and the admin team, and we appreciate the opportunity to work through issues as they arise.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
In terms of mental health, have you guys discussed, or do teachers have feedback on, really the food that's available and time to eat and things like that?
That did not come up. No, we did not discuss that.
Just
But are you talking about like school lunches and stuff, or?
Yeah, I think that diet has a lot to do with mental health and having time to eat and time together to eat. I don't know, but just something
Good.
to talk about.
We'll add that to the list. I know at the high school, we started having a monthly birthday luncheon, and that's been helpful.
It has been a nice, yeah.
I mean, I find that in my half hour, I don't have time to eat, but I didn't when we had 40 minutes. And so it's a me thing and not a.
Everyone's different.
Right. So, but thank you. We'll add that to the list.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Diving into our partner reports. Let's see, anyone from our nonprofit partners here? Anyone from the board have anything specific to ABC or Ed Foundation reports that they wanted to touch on?
Actually, I do have one question.
Sure.
What do the teachers understand about the community school program?
We've had some frequent emails about that. I know I've talked to them, and so, we posted things that they offer on the Facebook page. And so we know that they're feeding us good information that we're trying to give out to the parents.
And we know about the resource hub that they just created. And actually, the discussion that we had in our last meeting about teachers and mental health came actually from the community school, asking us if there's something they can do to help us there. And so that's what really started that conversation that we had at our last meeting. Really, this came from them.
Yeah, because I got some comments from a few people here and there that they didn't know what the community school program was.
But people, I think, like a lot of times they know it or they've heard about it, and they get confused because of the community school, not because of the community school program. And that has been a very confusing thing.
Okay.
And I think often we're too busy to read our Facebook and our meeting notes, and I think that can feed into that.
But we talked about the community school program when we talked about the mental health. And And so I let everybody at our meeting know that that's where it came from, so we did briefly talk about the community school program, so.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Hearing none on the other partner reports, just as usual, thanks to all the partners that submitted reports that have all received. I think we could safely move toward our action agenda. For the evening, starting with item A, which is related to the Safety Committee's Radon Mitigation Subcommittee. Megan, would you be taking the lead on presenting sort of what's at stake here, what decision is on the table
Sure.
for everyone?
Sure. Ray had mentioned developing a radon working committee, and I think that's a good first step. I have already received a quote to have the specific buildings retested in specific areas with high levels. So that's ready to go. Once I visit with Ray and whoever else wants to be on that committee. Ray, what were your ideas on developing the working committee members?
Well, based on this getting the board approved to do this committee, but if we get approval tonight, my thought was, I know Natalie's interested in being on it. So there'd be me and Natalie. I would suggest we definitely need Cody, because we need somebody from the building maintenance to be
Sure.
part of that. I think it'd be good to invite Mr. Rockefeller, since he's been involved, just have him part of the team.
Okay.
I did talk to Guy Bleisner, he's interested, so we've got a professional from the state of Idaho. And maybe a suggestion from a teacher from the safety committee that would want to be on part of that.
Okay.
So my thought was,
Oh, go ahead.
whatever you, that was just my thoughts. I haven't.
Sure.
We can discuss later about who we want to ask to be on it, but I think once we get the committee set up, I thought the first objective would be meet and agree on another round of testing.
Yes.
And use the proposal that we've got from the Teton Radon Services that you got a quote from.
Yes.
To do the testing in Teton Middle School, Driggs Elementary, and Rendezvous.
Did we also we talked about just doing that in-house as well? Have you thought about that?
Well, based on, we talked about that in the meeting, but based on this quote, it's pretty inexpensive. And if you look at the cost of the kits, which includes this quote, it's pretty, we got a professional coming and doing the testing with the kits and everything. We just need as a committee to agree on when we want to do it and get everybody's buy-in on. Or we're gonna, and his suggestion is, based on what Megan's already talked to him about, was basically just testing the same locations that we did last year. So we got some consistency. And we do them at a time period where the school's open and it's in school session, so. But we can work those details out if it had a meeting, so if the board's good at setting the committee up, unless you got something else, Megan.
Nope, I'm ready. He's ready to go whenever we say we'll get it scheduled. So
Okay.
Now,
we're ready to go.
Leisner?
Guy Bleisner
He's the State Department Safety Coordinator.
Department of Idaho Environmental Quality, he's a safety rep. He came up and looked at all our schools, what, 2 months ago, Megan, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe it was the end of October.
Yeah. So he's not tied into any radon company. He's works for the state of Idaho and environmental quality, and he's quite knowledgeable about radon testing. In fact, it was Guy's suggestion about we need to test when the schools are in session. That came from him, not.
Okay.
And there are no state regulations for radon in schools. So this is kind of outside of anything that he's really worked with. So it'll be good to have him on our committee.
Or federal, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I don't have really many questions about this one, so.
And then the goal would be is we agree on the dates and where we're gonna do it and then once the results are in, we'll report back to the work group, report back to the board, and I guess we decide from the board perspective, what's the next step.
Okay. You want to make a motion to the effect of, establishing the subcommittee?
Well, I'd make a motion that we establish a radon mitigation work group that go ahead and further the testing of the 3 schools.
Give a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. That moves us forward to, decisions, from executive session regarding employee A and B leave. We are, able to make a decision on, employee A. And B, employee B is tabled for further conversation, just to work out some details, so. I think, I would just ask for a motion to approve employee A leave as submitted.
Make a motion to approve employee A as submitted.
Give a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And then Diane, you've got that tracked on employee B, schedule table for today. That takes us to our discussion agenda on 2025-26 certified and classified position needs and admin recommendations. I'll kick it over to Marcus, it looks like, for a rundown on that.
Sure. Do you guys have, I think you have this in the report.
We do.
So we have looked at as a, I understood what you meant. That's all right.
I'm getting that.
So as an admin team, we have looked and we've been sort of collaborating for a few months on what are our critical needs versus what are some immediate needs and what are some strategic needs going forward that we wanted to present to the board for consideration. I think one of the first ones we looked at was from an administrative level would be consolidating a number of tasks that have been spread across the administrative teams over the last few years into a director of instruction position to oversee curriculum, professional development coordination, tier 1 instructional leadership and coaching, school level technology support, and certified staff onboarding. So again, taking some tasks that have been spread across and that we have shared over the last few years that administrators have shared, and putting those into one in terms of management and efficiency. And then based on some feedback we received from the guidance team, and I believe you guys may have seen that presentation a few weeks ago from our guidance counselors, they had presented to us and indicating there's a significant need for a bilingual social worker. Our population of Spanish-speaking students, Spanish-speaking families, we're feeling is underserved currently by our lack of bilingual social worker, and we've identified that as a critical need as well. We need another special education teacher at Teton Middle School. They were looking at more than 80 students who are presently eligible for special education. That includes 3 who have more significant needs, and supporting those students takes a bit more manpower than a less significant student would. A student with fewer significant needs would. Currently at Driggs Elementary School, they are allocated 2.5 special education teachers. Again, as their numbers come up, when we look at our developmental preschool program, 90 to 100% of the students who are currently attended are slotted to attend either Driggs Elementary's extended resource room program, or they live within the boundaries of Driggs Elementary School. So there's a big push into Driggs Elementary next year. We're asking to move that from 2.5 up to 3. So it'd be the increase of a half-time certified special education teacher. A full-time CTE teacher split between Teton High School and Teton Middle School. Career exploration, especially at the middle school, is now required.
And that position, the halftime position is needed there. And in Teton High School, it allows for the expansion of CTE into the CTE pathway. Those are some things that Nate and Sam and Mr. Ashton, and Mrs. Coots had identified as critical needs. Our immediate needs go from there. Again, we tried to structure these in a way that would prioritize them by group. Immediate needs, an EL and instructional coach, supporting Teton Online students. So again, recognizing that presently we do not have enough bilingual staff to support some of our linguistically and culturally diverse students, and an academic dean at Teton High School. And then, longer term strategic needs, instructional coaches for a K3, a 4-8, and a 9-12 level, full-time community relations coordinator. And then moving the principal of Teutonia Elementary School's current 0.5 teacher, 0.5 administrator to a full-time administrator.
Can I bring up one, we have a typo that has been fixed and that we'll throw back in the orange. And two, we forgot one that we've talked about that we know is coming. And that is the second year the dual language program is in the high school. In order to be able to offer the associate's degree track, we are expecting to have to add a teacher for that, not next year.
So is that the typo, is that the academic dean?
Yes.
One instead
There's
of
one, not three, sorry.
Yeah.
And we
Thank
corrected
you.
it here, but we knew that it was, I should
Okay.
have pointed that out. Yes. Questions?
So,
I have one, but
Sure.
Kathleen, go for it.
I keep hearing from parents about large classroom sizes. And there is one classroom teacher on here.
At every level, I'm just clarifying, at every level or specifically in one space or another, we do have, as we typically have had, we do have some groups that are larger than others that are sort of moving through the system. And that, I'm not saying that explains that.
And that may be part of it. I have requested a class listing so that I can do something besides just listen to, hearsay.
Right.
But it does concern me that we already have 50% more administrators than our state allocation. And yet the top critical need is listed as another administrator.
I think a director of instruction really gets at the heart of our sort of student-centered decision-making. It truly does. When you have someone who can oversee instruction and you can oversee curriculum, I think the impacts from that tend to multiply themselves from school to school and level to level. Right now, every administrator is thinking on some part of curriculum, some part of professional development in their schools. Right, these are tasks that if we have centralized or one individual who could manage that and direct that across all schools, especially at our K3 levels, we could get consistency there, building there from up to RUs. So we did identify that, right, as a critical need, and we still believe that this is based on the best interest of our students.
How does that position complement Megan's position? I'm not sure exactly your title.
No, but
I don't think she is.
It's an excellent question. So one of the pieces that as we look at staffing, and that's, I kind of don't know that I have an official title. Which is, I think, a symptom of the fact that the way that things get spread out and shared across the district doesn't always, work as intended. The reality is, giving district-wide responsibilities to folks at a building level doesn't really work that well, because that person really has to be focused within their building. the majority of the time, right? You still have to react to the same things, even if maybe you're have less students. Some of that day-to-day function still goes. So last year, the Victor Elementary principal was the curriculum director as well. And that split really long-term wasn't working. So the responsibilities that I currently have, I am acting as a school psychologist for the district, so attending meetings when we have done any type of testing towards eligibility for special education, also attending 504 meetings that include eligibility, that includes emotional, behavioral things. So school psych would be part of that. Director of assessment, I'm like kind of a catch-all district admin. I do our state reporting. I'm in charge of our student information system. I don't even know. There's more, but a lot of it is like small pieces. And I think that is the piece that we're feeling is, yes, like just not one person who can kind of have enough time to really focus in and keep it on instruction. So I'm also trying to work with, I do a lot of technology support as well. I roster all of the assessments, all of the digital products that we use in each of the classrooms. There's just, no.
I have a couple questions.
And we don't have, and so it's sort of one of the pieces I think that I am feeling is we don't really have an actual solo school psychologist in our district. That position isn't officially there. It would allow, more time for that individualized student problem solving and school system support for challenge. If some of that technology piece, some of that, not curriculum, but a lot of that has come back to me this year.
Could there be, I'm just problem solving and
totally.
you would say yes or no, but the bilingual school social worker, could you find someone with that additional psychology skill?
I think that would be a different role. So, and we have said social worker in this position, knowing that we may also only be able to hire a counselor. Because a social worker has a little bit of a different preparation program than a school counseling program. And one of the pieces that we're noticing in our bilingual student population is, and I think in all of our student population, is a more trauma, more sensitive things that are coming in terms of outside of school experiences and inside of school experiences. And so the social worker in the ideal, the position of someone with a social work background may be better equipped to support some of the needs that we're seeing. The school psychologist is a different type of role. Yeah.
Probably I'm quickly running out of my grace period to ask basic questions like this, but I'll ask anyways. Just in terms of the class size, in the realm of class size, and do you guys, when you make these recommendations, do you strictly make these on budgetary limitations, or can we talk more about a few FTEs that are teachers to address that, or is that budget limited, or is it just you've looked at class sizes and maybe you don't agree that we need that?
So we have looked at class sizes. That's actually where we start this conversation, is in some just total numbers and where are we feeling a pinch, right? And we also then look at populations that kind of carry more weight than a typical student population, right? So the number of special education students, the number of EL students, and things like that. We also look at, in terms of, for instance, EL students at Driggs Elementary was a number that pushed for an additional staff member. But when we talked about it and broke down the needs of the students, we've added a newcomer position. That was the first time this year, which has been highly successful. We've already made some changes in the second try to this, to where Driggs Elementary specifically is getting more support for that. And when you look at the balance between our EL student population needs, newcomer versus a student who's been here for many years, we actually think that a greater focus on that tier one instructional strategies on our general education teachers, our regular classroom teachers, may give us more than a person who can pull more students out of for instruction, if that makes sense.
As a person with a master's in, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so we decided the strategy really is more of a focus on how do I change what I'm doing when I'm teaching reading or teaching math to better meet the needs of a diverse classroom rather than more like segregating instruction. And so that also ties into a director of instruction, somebody who really focuses in on that singular piece of need and how that our professional development is supporting that and all of that. Great. I lost track. I'll make it there. I don't think I answered all of your questions. You had one other piece.
Yeah, one more, but yeah, just in the strategic needs that are identified, the community relations coordinator, I like assume this is related to community schools.
Yes, and we're specifically, so there is confusion when you use those terms because we have a community school. We also have a new private high school that's going that people are thinking is maybe the community school. And so there's been lots of confusion. The other piece on that is, you know, some of the work that's being done, we started at more of a district level, systems level, because funding was insecure. We don't want to integrate something, have it for 6 months and then pull the plug. So it was what is the more sustainable piece in this opportunity to build, and that's kind of where we've focused. So it hasn't been as much at the individual teacher level as it has been of creating some systems for how do we get support, how do we understand resources, some relationships with some community pieces.
So that one is budgetary. That concern is budgetary, but if we were, if it was 2 and moving it to 1.
Yeah, again, I mean, you're right. And we're also including a little bit of, like, so that name change, a little bit more of that like PR voice as well, than what's occurring currently. I have one other, I remember what I was responding to in terms of the class size. So part of this, that CTE teacher definitely is about class size as well, right? That if you, so one of the pieces is we have been able this year to meet this need through the 21st century course, which is a course that happens at the middle school, that each student by the time they leave the middle school will have taken one digital course, because we think that being able to self-manage and navigate and a digital course is a 21st century skill. We should be able to do this. They have used this class period in order to meet currently that CTE requirement for middle schoolers. With the large group that is coming out of RUS, coming in, unless we want 45 kids in those 21st century classrooms, they're not going to be able to use that to meet that need. And we also think for the longevity of a CTE program, a digital independent course as the introductory may or may not be the right way to introduce CTE and the potential pathways that the high school is working to build. Having a shared person who really understands each of the high school pathways to be able to really integrate, so that kids can leave the middle school with a clear understanding of what's possible, and what all of that means would be fantastic. It also alleviates some of that class size piece. I don't know, Mr. Ashton could expand a little on how that would help there. It also would help at the high school. Yeah.
I would also say the numbers for the special education request or the staff request for special education were based on numbers that we have identified a number of students that any one special education teacher could both case manage and support in sort of other direct instructional ways, with a little bit of latitude on the edges for the numbers of students with more significant disabilities and the system that each school is using. So when we had requested an additional staff for the middle school and an additional halftime staff there, that was certainly based on student numbers coming up again from the preschool and then moving from Rendezvous Upper Elementary into Teton Middle School.
How many special ed teachers are at the middle school right now?
There's presently 3.
Three.
And 4 at Teton High School, 3 at the middle school, 3 at Rendezvous, each of our elementary schools. So Victor has 1. Teutonia, we split. Mrs. Godfrey provides that support with, again, with some input from myself. And then at Driggs Elementary School has 2.5.
Okay.
I guess sort of, then I would just ask like, in regards to like the community or the community relations coordinator. And like, you know, the promise or potential of having like a full scale holistic community schools effort in the district. Like this community relations coordinator would be that'd be a pretty large like part of that job. I mean, it's a big main part of implementing something like that, but without a second FTE, are we like accounting for that already? Or are we practically saying that that will go to 1 FTE? Or not be there, like, and that's as much of a question for the finance committee, I guess, as it is for. Maybe that's me asking Diane and Kathleen.
I think, a lot of it is going to depend on some of the things that we find out about some of the potential funding and what the state decides to do.
Sure.
I don't have an answer to that question.
No one does.
I mean, the bigger question that you led with, right? I don't have an answer. In terms
Yeah,
of
it's a good point.
scaling that down from 2 to 1, what the other funding sources may look like for next year. That was outside of our direct budget this year.
Yeah.
So we're also trying to figure that out.
So we still have a chance to figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll look away.
So in reading this chart, the color coordinating, nailed it. So you're like, if there's 3 positions available, or you're saying these are the top 3, not 1 of each. Level. Do you understand what I'm
The
asking?
top 3 at the top. So if we had to fund
Yep.
just 3
Those
positions.
are what the admin team is suggesting are the most important for upcoming years, or I'm just trying to prioritize.
Yeah,
what admin
I
is
think
saying.
there are some,
Red is critical. They're for this year.
right,
Or next year. No.
right.
Say that again, please.
This year, for the upcoming year, yes.
Okay, those are the critical needs.
Yeah.
25, 26.
Yep, okay.
But is there a pathway budgetarily to do this all now?
Are we looking at the top 5? Are we looking at the purple? Is that what we're talking about? Are we looking at the entire, just
I was asking like what like
if we had to pick
critical or like
3 out of
these are
the top
necessary?
5?
Yeah,
Is that what you're asking?
yes,
I think if we were given a mandate to say, pick your 3.
yeah,
We would have to go back as an administrative team and really dive into, what can we live without? We put these 5 at the top because we feel like they're critical for next year. If we were told
so
by
they're,
the board and the finance committee that that's not an option, I think we would need some time to look at this list, this top group of 5 and say, let's identify our 3 and make sure we get this correct.
I don't think that's the guidance you're giving now, right?
no,
No,
I was
no,
just curious in
I was
my,
just-
not at all.
yeah,
Okay,
No,
got it.
I'm not saying that's guidance, I was just asking if it was prioritized.
Sure, yeah.
Or if it's like, these are all the most important, so you answered it perfectly, thank you.
For me, the number 1 thing on this list is a CTE teacher. I mean, I think that our school district is really lacking on CTE instruction. And there's so much opportunity for the kids in this area to participate in the trades. We have so many resources in this valley for work study, for everything, and we don't utilize it. And to me, the focus should be on to me, the CTE teacher goes across the whole spectrum. And I think, I know some of the different we have in the district. But we're hired, some of these positions are specialized or focused on a small group of, it's not for the bigger student body, I guess what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, I think we agree, right? with
And
what you
I just
say,
think that
we put it in the
that's what the
critical
focus should
area.
be on is how can we use these resources that pull in the broadest group of students? If that means more reduce the class sizes or whatever, but that should be, to me, the focus is how can we send these resources to impact the biggest, broader group of students in our district.
I think we agree. I think the inclusion of the CTE position in the critical needs area reflects that we share that sentiment.
What's that?
Um,
Yeah, I was
Josh?
catching, yeah, picking up on, yep.
Sure. I just share one thing. I think in my 10 years, watching the district work and try to divide up the work, we've had one unique challenge in that rural schools will always wear multiple hats. That is the nature of rural schools. We've also had a unique person who has over that time at various times had lots of different jobs. I think one of the reasons why we've included the admin, and I'm sharing with you information just so you are aware. Does that make sense? I'm not trying to make an argument for, but there is a good reason why it is here, and that is for a long time we have used Megan in so many different capacities. And each time we've rotated that through, she's had to keep some of that knowledge as she's moved through those different roles and responsibilities. Sometimes even after a staff, it didn't work out with that staff member and they're long gone. She had to absorb that responsibility and is still doing that. In a lot of ways, her FTE is already, without the district psychologist, is probably 1.75 FTE. In some ways, we're truing up a position that has really become not sustainable. And I think that's a piece that, just to put that into perspective, it says 1 FTE. Really, we're trying to take 2 FTEs that Megan is carrying. And I think we're all in agreement, if you've had a chance to work with Megan, she's invaluable to the district. And if it helps her role be sustainable I know here's one way to litmus test that. We could not hire someone to replace Megan. We just would not find someone to do that. And so that is a good litmus test to say, she really is a 1.75 FTE. It's challenging custodial, right? They measure it by square footage. And a certain amount of square footage equals a certain amount of minutes, which equals a certain amount of hours per week. With Megan's admin role, it's tough. There's no square footage that we can grab onto, but I guarantee you she could start listing just the files she's still responsible for and people go to her for.
I think you should, because it sounds like you have a lot on your plate,
Yeah.
and it would be good to really have that on paper.
Well, this is kind of where they're doing that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of that is truing up a rural way of doing things. As we've grown and gotten bigger, we're truing up. We cannot, as we move forward, we kind of have moved past a stage where we're a little bit bigger. We're a medium-sized district instead of a small rural school.
Maturing
Yes.
here.
And so that's another way to think of this. We're truing up and hopefully making things more sustainable for district admin. I'm not applying for the job, so I'm not saying that I want that, just saying.
You're done. Question. And thank you for outlining these needs and expressing, what's important to the admin team to be more efficient. And I think that it would be really helpful to have kind of some feedback, like we've been giving feedback and you guys presented to us and we're saying a couple of things, and so it'd be good to kind of go back and forth a little bit. And one thing that I keep on hearing from everyone is the need to address these learners that are at the higher percentage and having them be more challenged. And so I see a lot of special education teachers. And I'm wondering, how can we include improving not just the people in need and the kids that are, at risk, but how can we make students that are at standard and above achieve even more? Can we include a position such as the SPED teacher and have them be multitasking? And right now at RUSE, you have like the STEAM class being taught by a certified paraprofessional, right? Who's not full-time. So I'm just asking to really focus on trying to not only bring up from the bottom from kids that are in critical need, but how can we also engage with those students that are standard and who can achieve higher?
I hate to just keep coming back to the same thing, but I do believe our request for a director of instruction supports that need, right? In terms of helping teachers improve their ability to differentiate, not just for students who are struggling, but to provide appropriate differentiation for students that are at the top in order to get more, to see these students grow as well.
Well, I could see that, but we would also need a teacher to actually do that. And like in Victor Elementary, for example, there's one class in there's 2 third grade classes, and one of the third grade classes gets additional math time. And those are the kids that are doing exceptional. So that's not fair to the other third grade class. And also that should be going on all over, right?
Yeah, I can't speak to all the models that the individual schools may be utilizing at this point in terms of how they're getting to students that are performing at or above grade level in terms of improving growth there as well. So if we have any other administrators that would like to.
Director of instruction could help to help improve tier 1 instruction, which would also include extended and expanded opportunities for our high achievers as well. A director of instruction would help with tier 1 instruction across the board for every single kid in our schools, not just an at-risk demographic.
I do think there are some teachers who have been trained to work with students who are twice exceptional, right? Both gifted and talented, and may indicate or have some indication of, executive function challenges, right? They may be eligible for special education at the same time they could be gifted and talented. We could certainly, from my perspective as the director of special education, I could look to that type of skill set when it came to hire. It's just dependent on who would apply for these positions.
My understanding with the director of instruction, just by looking at it, would that person be in classes as well, like go in and be an instructional coach, or was that a different? And I saw the EL instructional coach. As the director of instruction, was that kind of the concept behind it, or overriding, like with the collaboration time? So I'm just piggybacking off of hers, because that, in my mind, I thought instructional coach as well as director of instruction.
I think there's certainly this coaching component to a director of instruction, as and Megan could probably speak to this again more articulately than I can. But clearly there is a role in terms of coaching for, if we're identifying curriculum, if we're implementing curriculum, we're going to need the person who understands that best to be in our classrooms, observing teachers, providing feedback, all of those things.
Providing support for them.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think also in the professional development, helping empower some of the administrators to be able to provide some of that instructional support too is a role of a director of instruction. I think every single building administrator, I mean, I can share in the 8 years that I was a building administrator here, I had high intention to be in classrooms all the time. And it is amazing what you can respond to that can make that really challenging. I think the balance, again, with the coaching would be also, I think, starting with systems, right? So one of the systems we've looked at really closely is teacher onboarding, even administrator onboarding. How well are we preparing people to be ready for their job day one? How are we continuing that support and that feedback throughout the year? We've started with some great resources for it, but then the follow through of continuing to support, continuing those conversations gets muddied in the rest of whatever's occurring in a school year. And so the beauty of having a more narrower scope, as someone who was curriculum instruction assessment, ELL, and the unofficial dual language director, as well as the person who was doing state reporting one year, I do think there's a lot of value in somebody who gets to just sort of stay in one lane and really push. Rather than get a little distracted.
Guess just sort of in the vein of how Natalie's talking about it, I'd be interested almost since we've got this in front of us, talking about it in the frame of if there was an almost extra category in here and you could color it green, since these are all emergency colors. How could we structure another category, not now or but in the future of if we weren't always doing stuff on such a razor thin margin, and we could consider what it was like to reach towards something elite, where there was a ecosystem where we have all these kids, you listen to the high school where these kids are taking advanced, they're taking AP credits, they're taking all of these college level courses. We clearly have this ecosystem of kids that are reaching to be elite and go on to do elite things. What would another category to me look like of if we were going to start reaching for stuff and where we have limited obviously options, but when we look at budgets and we're looking at oh, this potentially could be done the same way with less money in one area. And what could we put those savings towards in another area where we're reaching for something great? And I'm not saying this isn't reaching to be great. That's not. I'm saying what kind of needs would be identified if you created another category like that, where it's not just throwing out the budget and saying we don't have budget limitations, but what if we didn't have as many budget limitations? It would give to me personally, it would give me a good vision for the board to grasp onto about what a picture would look like for you guys about what it's like to go even further above and beyond what you imagined. You know what I'm saying? It gives sort of even, and since this is in a public forum too, it gives people who are in the community, in the weeds, that are deeply involved in the district, but maybe it's from a armchair quarterback perspective because they're observing. It gives people sort of a vision to latch onto that you guys are outlining that says, look at how many more great things we could be doing if we had some of these reach options. That to me is sort of part in line with the maturity of the district too, I mean, we clearly have people in the community and kids that are just stretching to get the most out of this entire experience. And I mean, it would be interesting to see. And then, you get into the budget conversations about stuff and what's realistic and what isn't, but.
I think that would help with behavior problems as well, as kind of kids that are bored might be having poor behavior. And so kind of reaching those higher limits would be helpful in that. I cut you off.
No, that was it. I think it'd just be interesting to see. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that
Go ahead.
sorry. So I will say, I did reach out to my sister who is an 8th grade science teacher in New Jersey, and I spoke to her, what are your administration needs? And basically she's said how important almost every school has a director of instruction, and that is really important. But my other concern is having a really top heavy education system, and I'll just speak of higher level, college level, anytime administration balloons, it's a failure and it drives up costs and the teaching doesn't get better. So I see where you're saying that you need this, and I think that's great, but I'd also like to see more teacher support at these other levels and make sure that the class sizes aren't big as well. So if we can talk more about that, that'd be great.
And so I think Megan, you
Go
were
back.
helping Megan with, doing the data dump on the classes.
Yes.
So, it would be wonderful to get that.
And then.
Yep, so Sam and I have been working on that. It was 800 some pages, so we're trying to get it to a place where it's readable without giving confidential information. So I'll get that to you as soon as I possibly can.
Okay.
You know, this is my fourth year on the board, and every year we do this exercise. And I know we have a limit, how many we feel is all dictated by the budget. We just prioritize. But there hasn't been a year that I haven't been on this board that down the road, we always need somebody else. It's critical. So that's something to think about, is maybe we need to keep an FTE in reserve, the unknown that always comes up in the fall. Do we need another third grade teacher? Do we need another fifth grade teacher? Who knows what? But you always are coming back to the board saying we need now this new position because it's critical and we don't have the funding. Maybe we should think about keeping one of those in reserve.
Like a growth line.
Yeah. I mean, I can stop, but like, the reason, like I say, the things I'm saying is that like, if anyone in here is not watching the news, which I imagine that's not one single one of us, like if the entire project that is public education and the entire philosophy of how we deliver it in the country and subsequently like the state is changing, where there are places you used to get support that are abdicating their role, pushing things down, and then that consequentially has state entities that may be following some of the same suit, but with like a little oversight. I won't speak to my own like concerns about like maybe the things taking that shape, but an optimistic thing that I draw from that is that it is going to consistently drive education and how we educate students to be more and more of a local responsibility that we either take on or we don't. And we are uniquely suited in this community with a group of people who support public education and want to support an elite version of it that challenges the top tier students and make sure everyone across the board is getting an elite education and opportunity. And as that inertia and gravity just keeps pushing stuff down to us, consequentially, like funding decisions like bonds, you know, and other funding, when we go to the community, we're unique in Idaho because we actually have a community that stands up and supports it every time. And if we have like a vision for that, and we also have this increased gravity that everyone is of a more mutual understanding that it is on us to fund it and it's on us to execute it without some of the top down pressures that we faced before for good or bad. Like we have enough momentum, I think, in this community to support like being something truly great in an environment where maybe that would be the exception as opposed to what's going to happen in a lot of areas where they're going to be facing these pressures without a community base of support that is ready to answer the call. I think we've got it here. And that's why, that's just like a statement, and I'll just quit because that's enough.
Well, I think you said that really well, and you brought up a lot of really good points, and the fact that we do have people who support our bonds, we have to respect that relationship and make sure that relationship doesn't dwindle, because if the education doesn't continue to get better, then that will develop a lack of distrust. And so we have something good right now, and we have to really keep it. I don't know, sorry, but thank you for your comment.
I feel like we can absolutely think bigger. I think it's hard, right? I mean, I think we are coming from, many of us, from years of like, how can we make this work, right?
Yeah,
And
years
not
of abuse and
thinking
underfunding.
about what it might look like to have more. Right? I mean, more has, it's how do we fit it in what we have has been more of the mentality. We can think bigger, right? As a team. I do have a question coming back. We knew this was a discussion and a great place to start, and I recognized right away that we forgot to put in, because we know it's not next year, but that dual language expansion into the high school. Do you want it actually rank ordered, which we didn't necessarily do? We colored, but it doesn't necessarily mean this is in the order of top within the color system. And then we did not include the cost because there are some questions out there, right? Some of what I'm looking at in the bills looks like there's going to be a change to that salary schedule. We also have a salary schedule committee, so we could put a number in there, but it really, like, until some of that's landing.
I think that'd be worthwhile having a rank and some sort of guesstimate on what the cost is.
Right, we could put our current average FTE costs, right, and then know any changes to the schedules would impact that.
We do this every year. We don't know for sure.
Right.
At least we got an idea.
I also would like it ranked. Like this one is, like, obviously critical need is self-explanatory, but just having it ranked so we have a better understanding. And could be beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, that'd help everybody, I think. I mean, to me, I'm like, well, needs are needs, so like we need them all, but the way it's framed currently, but yeah, it'll help like when we get into the hard decisions, like what we're actually to contextualize it in that way. Kind of hard to do that, I'm sure, but. All right. Well, thank you so much for this and the discussion. What is our timeline on like the actions that are related to this piece, Diane? I can talk about it later, I guess, in future.
So it'd be nice, as the finance committee starts working out the budget, we'll have to itemize. Kind of like using the board.
Yeah.
Probably in
Under the
April,
board's
we got-
direction,
yeah.
itemize it and then see kind of what our budget can withstand.
Okay.
April.
Yeah, we'll probably start.
But we'd have to,
Looking at
as
some of
a
these
board,
line
make a
items.
decision
During budgeting.
in April.
Yeah, that'd be a good time frame.
Okay. All right, that takes us to item B, the school calendar. We don't have anything in here.
Nope, you
So-
don't. We don't have anything yet. So
Okay,
our
I
calendar
didn't
committee,
know, we don't have much, that could go all over the place if we did, so.
nope. So we actually need to push that to next month, but I will let you know that we have met 3 times and we are working on calendar options to present to the board next month.
And do you feel like you have a decent idea of like what the board is sort of, on, and all the feedback you've gathered and the previous
Yes.
comments that the board has made about like the shape that has to take? Cause do we have to make a decision on this next month or? am I
No, we'll
mistaken?
discuss it next month and then decide the month after that.
Okay,
Yep, and we've taken all the feedback from the town hall, the survey, from the board, and from our teachers and parents and all of that. So we're working through those right now.
okay. We'll table that until next month. And then that takes us to public comment on non-agenda items. I'm only seeing admin folks here. So seeing none. Let's talk future agendas. Like
This month, Megan and I are meeting with the city leaders on the 26th. To see if we could get any support regarding
thank you, guys.
volunteer mitigation support.
Yep,
So if we can put that on the March agenda as an action item, We wanna go ahead with that study by official advice. And it always comes to what feedback we get from the city and the county, but at least to get something positive, we have that, make an action.
Yeah, if you're good with touching base with Diane to let us know if it's gonna be an action item or if it needs to be anything else.
You just kind of put on your thing as an action right now, is it kind of as a wait marker. Yeah,
And
for March.
I will get the policy 8172 back them to you and,
So that'll be an action item too.
yeah. What is that? That's the surplus, equipment disposition.
And that'll be an action item at this point, because we've discussed.
Yeah, we already discussed it.
Okay, and we've got budget amendment, budget adoptions.
I would like to see, I've heard from any number of people that there is an SRO at the high school, but we did not approve a contract or MOU. And so I would like to have some discussion on what that arrangement is.
So actually that is something that has been directed by Sheriff Lamo. So I can find out more information for you on that and get that to you, Kathleen.
As a discussion item.
Yep, I can definitely bring information for that.
Thank you.
And then I don't know if it would be on next. I mean, Lisa, you were actually talking, the reports with like the college course breakdown and landscape of online course stuff. I don't know if that's next month or not. I mean, really,
Get it together by next,
only if it's in,
it wouldn't be that difficult.
okay. Maybe
And I'll work
we,
with Lacey on class sizes too. We can get all that information for you.
okay. And that I don't know if we need a specific agenda call out, maybe to do that through administrative reporting or something, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And then do we have any policy pieces that are on our policy timeline that we were committed to addressing? I don't have my
I
notes.
feel like originally, didn't Megan say there was like 5 or 6 that are her high flyers that we need to update?
Yeah. So
We
Megan,
did that already. We
Well, my
did
question
those
was-
already.
Well, I knew
But
Megan, but do we have any
my
other
biggest one is the attendance policy. Our admin team's been working really hard. We've been pulling Idaho code and making sure that all of the vocabulary and language is exactly the same, so it's not as confusing. So we'll definitely have that prepared for you by next month.
as a discussion,
Yes.
okay,
Or, I mean, it's just going to be a few tweaks with vocabulary and clarifying excused and unexcused. And then we'll clearly define makeup work for high school as well.
so Ray acknowledged, we have a potential action item then
Yeah.
on that.
Yes,
Okay,
agreed. Thank you.
let's do that. Oh, I hope I'm not missing, what am I missing?
I'm looking at your master calendar and you've got everything covered, which is what you have on there, so.
Well, let's leave that down. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, our next school board meeting is March 10th. Look forward to catching everyone there, and in the interim as needed, ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you guys so much. Get this,
Start turning it on.